We're talking about dining with Jesus, and I hold kind of in tension. I don't know about tension, but with what's going on in the world today, which I already shared with you. And so I would encourage you to stay in an attitude of prayer over this week and as we move forward. And I'd love for you to read those scriptures again. You can give me some feedback. And if it's something real negative, just send it to Brent. That'd be good. All right. I shared a couple of these things concerning food because I want to open up with a little talk about food and the table. So I'll use dining, food, table, meal, kind of all interchangeably. That talks more about presence and people than just the actual somebody's house or a table or food necessarily. I mean, a lot of it has to do with food. It's kind of a love language for me. Like I walked out there and looked at the barbecue and just dreamed about eating something in a little bit and all of that. Nothing was ready, so I couldn't bring something in here yet. I want to say, but I don't want to make it too much, that transformation can happen or begin when we have encounters with food. A lot of good conversations with people, especially those that I don't know, can happen over meals. And when I say that, it could be coffee, a drink, something like that, as well as food. They tend to bring us together in more meaningful connections. So sometimes it's even nice, like if you're at a place where you're not real comfortable, even having something in your hand, then kind of helps, right? When we're talking to someone, like it could be a plate of food, although that's dangerous, at sometimes, or coffee, or whatever your beverage of choice is. It just makes something, more comfortable. For us, when we come to a spiritual part of it, there is a place where I do, again, that transformative work. There's a birthplace, maybe, of God doing some transformative work. So even like those that have restaurants or different coffee shops, food trucks, I think the guys, cooking today, there's an element of man camp like that. A lot of things revolve around food. And so even a restaurant, I love going restaurants where there's some community element to it. Like some of our local places, I won't name any just for sake of hurting somebody's feelings, but you walk in and you feel like, I don't know if it's home, but there is, like, maybe we put it this way, you're known, you're recognized. I like that. Where everybody knows your name was the old show, right? Some of us have the benefit a little more of that because we're known in some form, so it's easier. Now, not everybody likes that. I won't go into that right now, but some do. And so what we've seen happen, it seems like over the years, is a big shift in culture, where modern life has eroded the sense of community in some way and connection that was even present in biblical times. So we get glimpses of it today, but we find ourselves not gathering at a table as much anymore, although I think there's a revival of some of that in some form. And again, I'm not just talking about someone coming to your house. It can be in different forms. Like I said, it could be a coffee shop, restaurant. But it seems like now we're really going in a lot of different directions. You can get food delivered to your house. You don't have to go anywhere. And everybody's going in different directions. When you have family, we're eating out more, but on the move, so it's quick. Less maybe home and homemade for some. Others, maybe not, but I did a big talk on the table years ago, and there was this idea that they threw out there that I had read about families that eat together, grow together. I don't know if that would resonate with you or you think that's true, but table time can establish certain things. When you have that time with your family, whether that family is just a couple of you or a big group of you with a bunch of kids or something like that, I think a lot of values and things come out. How'd your day go? Whether they completely talk or not. Sometimes we don't want to think that presence doesn't matter. Like sometimes presence matters. Like I love sometimes like you were just here. We didn't have a deep conversation. Our lives weren't transformed, but we were present with one another. But that's hard for a lot of us. Myself, I can be hypocritical with this because a lot of times now where you go or we find ourselves, and so this is critical of all of us maybe not some of you, but you go and you see a couple in a restaurant and what are they doing? You know what I'm thinking. They're looking at their phone. I'm not going to chastise or shame you right now. By no means. But it's true. We become more in a hurry. And I looked up this, I'd thrown this out years ago, and I looked it up. It was actually an NPR and a Harvard, and I forget the third one, they did a study. And it was interesting, when I found the study, it was a reference to the study, and it was from a company. I thought this was really cool. I didn't realize it at first until I was reading it, and they were selling homemade pizza ovens where you cook them. So they were referencing this to try to help, hey, buy a pizza oven, do this stuff at your own place, and build some community. Because the study found that the average dinner time, I don't remember what year, but used to be 90 minutes. Now it's 12 minutes. People, this was what we could say in the past, people eat in front of the TV. All right, but now we already said it. They eat in front of their phones. And then someone said in there, as the table goes, so goes the neighborhood, or we said the family. There's an element to reflect back on as we look over the next weeks at this sermon series. Brent brought a story up last week. I have one today, and I'll try to keep it tight. But that has to do with biblical hospitality and the table. So again, I use it just as the big idea of food and dining and meals together. This Middle Eastern biblical hospitality perspective. I've been to Israel, 30 some time? Well, probably more than that, 30 years. Take people there. Been to Jordan, a lot of Middle Eastern places. I was just in, not Middle Eastern, but I was just in India recently. And my experience there has been a lot of food time is slow time. Invitation, come. Hospitality shown. Like I've eaten and taken some of you that have gone with me in some interesting places where we've had coffee with somebody, food with someone. And we realize that hospitality is shown regardless of the individual, and that a lot of preparation sometimes is put into this time so that the experience is communal oriented. Like even in the time of Jesus, there was an element of washing feet, things like that. I'm not promoting that we have a foot washing service in here. And if I ever come to your house, I don't want you washing my feet, to be honest with you. Not that you even thought of that. But they saw it as a God-given opportunity to do a good deed. Even enemies, there was sometimes where you would see enemies, if you came to their tent, they were required to serve you. Now, they could kill you right when you walked out the door, but during that time, it became a safe place of peace and protection, a communal experience. Some said that it created, and they used this quote, a taste of heaven. We found that it was an opportunity to remember, to tell story of God, your own story, and celebrate God and his story. So a lot of my journeys in Israel, for example, were during feast times. So I would be there for a biblical feast. I did a lot of youth ministry over there at that time for Sukkot. One of the things that the table did, so even today, I would want you to understand, though it's very simple, go have a hamburger and a hot dog, and a bag of chips and a cookie. And we want to provide that, and there's some tables out there. But this whole thing really is a symbol of people and presence over an actual place and the food. Look at Psalm 23:5. Here's just a couple scriptures that, I'll probably mention again. Psalm 23:5. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. So there's this idea that the psalmist wrote that you're going to be in the presence of enemies. God says he prepares a table there. That's more than just, hey, I'm going to give you some food and you're going to eat with your enemies. It's a deeper thing. I prepare something for you in the presence of your enemies that goes much deeper, provides something greater, and matters in a bigger way. Psalm 34:8, we reference this a lot. Taste and see that the Lord is good. There's something when we eat together with people in this way that we are not only eating something, tasting something, but there's an element when we do it in the name of the Lord, especially when we as fellow believers come together, followers of Jesus, we are tasting and seeing that God is good. It's beautiful. Taste and see that the Lord is good. Because meals then, I am notorious for eating too quickly. Meals slow us down. They can connect us in some deeper way. Meals can be an experience. We'll see it here in just a minute. And almost every story, Brent shared it last week, an experience of grace. Meals then, we'll see even today, and I think often, can be missional. So a lot of us worry about, we talked in the month of June when David was here from Mission India about going out into all the world, global missions. You guys, we just sent off a check, $10,000. You helped plant 2 churches, did a Bible program for kids, for 200 kids, and you didn't know this, we just had a little bit extra come in. You helped 2 pastors go to a pastor's conference coming up in February that have been persecuted. They're going to come and share their stories, be encouraged. You helped 2 of them come to that conference. It was awesome. And so what we see is there's this idea, and I don't want to make too much of it, and that was, I was telling you the big picture, but meals can be missional. There's this idea for Jesus that we all wonder, how can we share the gospel? We're told, like I was going with in June, Mission India, we heard from David, and he said, hey, where's your neighborhood? That's who's the people around you? That's the Great Commission for you. Jesus kind of pulls it in and says a lot of his missional work was around meals, dining, having something to drink together, feasting. So that go into all the world, there's a meal element to it. Look at this. This is Luke 7:34. The Son of Man, this happens like three times. The Son of Man came, this is right before, like literally right before our story today. The Son of Man, Jesus, came eating and drinking, and he's talking to the Pharisees, he's talking to the religious people, and you say, here's a glutton and a drunkard, and look at this. I think Brent shared this last week, a friend of tax collectors, that's what we talked about last week, and sinners. Because he eats missionally, eating and drinking, he's accused of being a drunkard, a glutton, because he's obviously doing it a lot. Doesn't mean he was, but that's what they were saying about him. Why? Because he's a friend of tax collectors and sinners. There is a missional aspect to it. There are 3 times in the New Testament that the Son of Man came. Just hang on to this. We'll come back to it again throughout the series. The Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve and give his life as a ransom for many. The Son of Man came to seek and save the lost. And then it says the Son of Man came eating and drinking. Those first 2 statements about him are statements of purpose. He came to serve, to give his life, to seek and save the lost. The third one is kind of the method, how we did it. I wonder how that would fit for you today. He came eating and drinking. Jesus is constantly feasting. People become the priority for him. It's not the food, it's people and presence. Now, Jesus then will do this often in the scriptures, the Gospels. He will accept a scandalous invitation, and in it, 4 hearts will be revealed. This revelation of 4 hearts that is exposed, we're going to see the sinful woman. I'm going to read the story in just a minute, who is shown love and she repents. The Pharisee who shows judgment, Jesus shows his grace and forgiveness, and the whole community that's observing this is challenged to reconsider their views. So I don't know where you fit today, but at least may we reconsider how we look at others today. Maybe even more concerning what's going on in our country and in our communities. So here's the story. Got like 23 minutes to share with you. Probably should cut that down because they're probably ready to go in a minute here. Luke 7, 36 through 50. Let's go to this story together. Let me read it to you, and then I'll give you a few points that are found in your notes, all right, that you can write down. One of the Pharisees asked Jesus to have dinner with him. Big deal. So Jesus went to his home and sat down to eat. When a certain immoral woman from that city heard he was eating there, she brought a beautiful alabaster jar filled with expensive perfume. Then she knelt behind him at his feet, weeping. Her tears fell on his feet, and she wiped them off with her hair. Then she kept kissing his feet and putting perfume on them from that jar. When the Pharisee who had invited him saw this, he said to himself, it doesn't look like he said it out loud, but he says, if this man were a prophet, he would know what kind of woman is touching him. She's a sinner. Then Jesus answered his thoughts. Simon, he said to the Pharisee, I have something to say to you. Go ahead, teacher, Simon replied. And then Jesus told him this story. A man loaned money to two people, 500 pieces of silver to one and 50 to the other. But neither of them could repay him, so he kindly forgave them both, canceling their debts. Who do you suppose loved him more after that? Simon answered, I suppose the one for whom he canceled the larger debt. And Jesus said, that's right. Great answer. Then he turned to the woman and said to Simon, look at this woman kneeling here. In the NIV, I thought it was interesting because I said it earlier in the scripture. Hey, Simon, do you see this woman? You see her. When I entered your home, you didn't offer me water to wash the dust from my feet, which was common that they would do. But she's washed them with her tears and wiped them with her hair. You didn't greet me with a kiss, but from the time I first came in, she has not stopped kissing my feet. You neglected the courtesy of olive oil to anoint my head, but she has anointed my feet with rare perfume. I tell you, her sins, and they are many, have been forgiven. So she has shown me much love. But a person who is forgiven little shows only little love. And then Jesus said to the woman, your sins are forgiven. The men at the table said among themselves, who is this man that he goes around forgiving sins? And Jesus said to the woman, your faith has saved you. And here's that deeper part. Go in peace. And there's a lot in there. And I'm going to try to address it all today. Not. I will leave lots of questions unanswered and things with it. But let me just tell you that we watch right now the outside coming inside. And we're not just talking about a woman who enters in to almost, not fully a private party, let me explain that in a minute, but comes into a place where she's not supposed to be. But she is so in love with the one who saved her that she doesn't care. She does something scandalous along with Jesus. And so that outside coming to the inside is not just physically in a room. It's in a heart. A Pharisee would have been one that says, I am pure and separate. And they were very serious about that. So this was a deeper revelation of his heart as well. This would have been, they call it a symposium. There's an in the room, often you'd see an inner room and then an outer room where when someone like this, by a religious leader, and I'm really stripping it down to some basics, so you can go a lot deeper with this. They'd have an outer room where they might have these couches where the symposium where Jesus, for example, and people that they invited over would almost relax, like they'd be laying down, feet kind of behind them, eating, and it was an idea of, we're going to invite this teacher, we want to hear what he has to say. And so a community could hear that and come, and they wouldn't be in that space, but they'd be outside that space, and they could hear what was going on. They could have some dialogue as well. But this woman took it to an extreme where she entered into that place, and then some of the scandalous stuff is letting her hair down, opening up her jar, kissing his feet, all things that instantly make you think, man, there is something way deeper going on. And what kind of woman would do that? And all the judgmental things that are happening that we would probably do ourselves. When he even says, if he only knew what kind of woman that was. Like, how do you even know? There's a lot happening there. When the woman walks into the room, there is this idea, I was thinking, even reflecting for myself, where judgment, I'll use just these two words, judgment or compassion rise up. And maybe you evaluate for you, they fight for dominance. One may rise above the other. And if I let, for example, judgment rise above compassion, that is where my focus goes, and it starts to dictate the next thing I do and say. And if compassion rises up, you know that. For you have been somewhere and watched someone come into the room, and instantly, what do? Judge them. You may be judging me right now. We do it over clothing, hairstyles, lighting, music, on and on it goes, right? And all of a sudden, one starts to focus on something, and we start to play the narrative, tell the story, assume a certain thing. And so one of the things that we see happen is I begin to allow that to then, I put it this way, point the finger and express certain things depending on what has kind of risen up above and is dictating what I think and then maybe even what I do. That could be grace over shame, compassion over condemnation, giving a blessing or feeding their brokenness, gratitude over judgment. And suddenly, I am wagging a finger at them instead of lifting a hand to help them. And so this disruptive encounter that is happening in their lives is exposing and revealing the truth of our hearts and reveals the truth of my heart, reinforces the identity of Jesus depending on what I do or not, or their own identity or not. And it may then either bring more turmoil or, like we saw Jesus do, it brings peace. I wonder how that plays out for you. What does it look like when you encounter those that you don't like, agree with? Or you don't even know, but you're judging based upon some experience you've had. And we could have all sorts of conversations about judging and et cetera, et cetera. But this is specific to this story with Jesus. So a meal opens up the heart and exposes the revelation of what is really going on inside somebody. For the outside has now come into the inside. All right, let me give you then a few things from your notes where I think we can learn how to eat and drink in the kingdom. And again, this is just some simple stuff that we could practice today around some tables and maybe this week. And maybe God will place us in a position where we have to engage. Number one, my encouragement is to extend your table to all. And you might be fighting right now. What do you mean by all, Ron? And right out of the gate for me, when I say that, my heart is exposed. Who is the all? I wonder what it is for you. One great dialogue you could have with Jesus is, hey, Jesus, who was the all to you? Did you mean all? Or did you mean like some of the all? Did you mean everybody? Or just some people? What would it look like to extend your table? And now I don't necessarily mean that you got to invite everybody into your house, because you might be freaking out right now, right? Great. Listen, I'm not going to have you come to my house, okay? Don't look at it that way. But I wonder what it means for you to extend your table. You know, one of the things that came to mind, it's been a long time since I experienced this. Maybe like my mom still has one. Do you remember the tables that have something called a leaf? Do you guys know what that is? I couldn't even remember the term, a leaf. You guys know what it is? All right. If you don't, ask somebody who's like above 60, all right? Okay. You get like, hey, get on that side of the table, and then you pull it apart. Some of them, if you real fancy people, have some that just automatically come up. We had one that we got to go get the leaf out of the closet, right? I love going to a restaurant and messing. I'm sorry, if anyone owns a restaurant in here, forgive me, you might hate me, and send me a letter, I get it. But I like sometimes, hey, we got a group of 10, can we move some tables? And then once in a while, they're like, no, we don't do that. Like, man, okay. Well, I'm just gonna sit on the floor then, whatever. But I like, it doesn't always work, so I'm not saying it has to be a thing, but I like when we are building community together. It's also what breaks my heart when it doesn't happen. So maybe there's some, I don't know, this is kind of like a thought, like, I wonder what my internal leaf is. I don't even know if that works. But I wonder what it is that I need to pull something apart to expose and open up me to allow people to come in that maybe I'm not fully on board with. What's that like? Extend invitations to all people to a table of fellowship, regardless of background or status. Engage with the churched, the de-churched. We've talked about this in the past, and the unchurched. Share meals, conversations, to foster faith and community. Who is that for you? Is it a neighbor? I'm not asking you to save them. That's Jesus. I'm just joining him in what he wants to do. For there have been times when I have done that. It's easier like when I'm in other countries and it's easy to do that. And sometimes it's a little easier here. But it's still hard for me even. Where when you do it, you see God sometimes do things that you couldn't manufacture. You couldn't have gotten that conversation going that way. I was listening to, it was challenging, our Practicing the Way podcast. We're going to go into our third week of 8 weeks on Practicing the Way, the class on Tuesday nights. It's awesome, man. I love the folks coming, but I love what we're learning together. And on the podcast, it talked about this guy who experienced, he was with another person, and instead of, I'll just paraphrase it real quick, instead of just giving money to a homeless person, this guy they met, it's a beautiful story of, we wanted to hear this kind of music, we couldn't find anything, and then he says, we met this homeless person, I was gonna give them some money or something like that, but this is crazy, we invited him to eat with us. And he sat down at a meal at some restaurant with them, and he ate, and he goes, people offer me stuff all the time. No one's ever invited me to eat with them. So they shared their story. They heard his story. And they had gone because they wanted to hear some, I think it was like blues music or something like that. And afterwards, the guy says, can I play a couple songs for you on my guitar? And he was playing some blues music that he wrote. And this guy said, I was so disappointed that I couldn't hear this music. But here, God did something great by inviting this guy to eat with us, and then we got to hear the very music we wanted. Now, I'm not telling you to go out there and invite every homeless person you meet to your dinner table. But I am wondering if we could be willing to add a leaf to our lives. That if we were listening, I'll come to this at the end, to Jesus, and he said, hey, invite them. Invite them to have a cup of coffee with you. Invite them to sit down. Invite them to eat lunch with you in the break room, whatever. Hey, invite them to sit with you. Have a hamburger. Sit with us. I don't recognize you. You look like you're somewhat normal. Come, sit with us, all right? Or you can go, there's 2 empty chairs over there, or whatever. Whatever you got to do. Sometimes change begins with an invitation. Simple invitation. Now, hear me on this. Often it's not adding something to your life. It's just inviting people to something that you already do. Jesus was a friend to them to save them, to share of himself and to draw them into the faith. He didn't want to just eat, though that's awesome. 2, embrace everyone with radical hospitality and grace. Emulate Jesus by welcoming others joyfully, regardless of social norms or their past, as Jesus did with the sinful woman. Exhibit grace and forgiveness, emphasize love and faith, and bring salvation into their lives. Jesus and restoration that can lead to healing and transformation. Jesus did that with these people. Man, I think we should do that in whatever way he invites us into. He dines with sinners. He challenges norms of purity and righteousness. This is where the broken found connection, belonging, restoration. When I welcome others with grace, I'm seeing each person as made in God's image and deserving of the very grace that I have received myself. Wow. Matthew 25, 35 through 40. I was hungry, you fed me, he said. I was thirsty, you gave me a drink. I was a stranger, you invited me into your home. I was naked, you gave me clothes. I was sick, and you cared for me. I was in prison, you visited me. Then these righteous ones will reply, Lord, when did we see any of that in you? Hungry, feed you, thirsty, give you something to drink, or a stranger and show you hospitality, or naked and give you clothing? When did we ever see you sick or in prison and visit you? And the king said, I tell you the truth, when you did it to one of the least of these, my brothers and sisters, you were doing it to me. Number 3, enlarge your heart of compassion. There is a story, a famous Christmas story, Christmas in July, isn't that a thing? Of the Grinch. You guys remember the Grinch? Enlarge your heart of compassion. The Grinch hated Christmas, the whole Christmas season. Now, please don't ask why. No one quite knows the reason. It could be his head wasn't screwed on just right. Ooh. Could be perhaps that his shoes were too tight. All right, there's an issue. But I think that the most likely reason of all may have been that his heart was 2 sizes too small. And then we know the result. What happened? He experienced compassion, saw this beautiful thing, and it said that his heart grew. How do I do that? How do I enlarge my heart? I need to shift my focus from judgment to compassion, seeing others as Jesus does. The moment for me when I see that judgment rise up and try to dictate my next move, my next direction, my next thing, I need to I need to go back to Jesus. Hey, Jesus, refocus me. I'm getting very judgmental right now. I even recognize it. I am judging that person. I don't know if I like them or not. I don't want to talk to whatever it is, and I need your compassion, and I got to refocus back to him and his grace that he has shown me. I look to them as he does, valuable, worthy of love and grace. He saw the sinful woman. Remember I said that in the NIV, it said he saw. Hey, Simon, do you see her? Do you see her? Or do you see what you perceive her to be? This is a posture of humility, serving, transforming perspectives from shame to grace. As Jesus demonstrates this, he is allowing the woman to anoint his feet, and he's teaching Simon about forgiveness. It transforms their previous encounters, changes their perspectives. Jesus would do this over and over again. He'd do it in Luke 22 when the disciples were fighting about who's the greatest, and over a meal, he would show them what he was really all about, what was most important, serving. I love Psalm 119, 32 through 34. I will run, this is from the ESV. I will run in the way of your commandments, God, when you enlarge my heart. Teach me, God, the way of your statutes, and I will keep it to the end. Give me understanding that I may keep your law and observe it with my whole heart. But it begins when I ask God today, on your behalf, for myself included, enlarge our hearts, Lord. Expand us. Open us up to see your grace and love that we have received for ourselves, even in the midst of chaos. And God, enlarge it to such an extent that we are willing to show it to others. That means I got to open up my whole heart. There's little things that you can do over the coming weeks. I think there's an element of going to camp or retreat. Acts of Kindness you saw on July 27th is doing a Saturday thing. Heritage and Journey are coming together, and they're going to go into a trailer park in Jacksonville and do a bunch of cleanup and just help people in a practical way. And it's not even to Christian people. It's to those that don't know Jesus. Why'd you do this? Why would you come do this? It makes no sense. Because Jesus loves us, and we want to show you grace and love because we serve a greater king. It matters to us because you matter to him. You could join up with that, some way to expand and enlarge your heart. And then the last thing is, outside of Jesus, is encourage community and bless others around a meal. Share stories. Use a dining experience, and again, coffee, a snack, lunchroom, whatever it is, to share God's story, your story. Ask about theirs. It'll foster intimacy and community. It's how Jesus interacted. Many lack connection, meaningful relationships, but they desire something richer with one another. And maybe part of the problem isn't the lack of social skills, and that may be a struggle, but it's the culture that we've created. So we want to encourage open conversations. I pray that the men that go to man camp, men that have that, we gather around fire and food, and we try to tell some true stories about ourselves. We need that. The Pharisee in us, the sinful woman in us, the things that matter, we want to have meaningful dialogue. It's hard, though, about life and our experiences. So we want to create some safe places for intimacy to happen. Build identity and bless one another. Build each other up. Reinforce what God is wanting to do and against what the enemy has been doing in their minds. One writer wrote, we don't just pass food around a table, but a little bit of ourselves when we do these things. Worship team can come. Jesus, there's a book that I've been reading, and then this is said by others too, that Jesus ate his way through the Gospels, especially in the book of Luke, the Gospel of Luke. So I'm encouraging you to eat your way through the Gospels. Eat your way with the gospel. So Jesus' invitation to us is to experience a meal with him. In your notes, experience a meal with Jesus. N.T. Wright said that when Jesus himself wanted to explain to his disciples what his forthcoming death was all about, he didn't give them a theory, he gave them a meal. Revelation 3:20, we've read it many times. Look, Jesus said, I stand at the door and knock. Hello. If you hear my voice and open the door, I will come in and we will share a meal together as friends. Share a meal with Jesus. What does that look like for you? Maybe it's a little bit more prayer time. Maybe it's some quiet time. Maybe it's reading your Bible time or whatever it is. We're learning some incredible things in our Practicing the Way classes. He is inviting you, though. It's not required. Jesus broke all the religious table rules. He blessed, he spoke truth, showed love, reinforced identity, all for you. Not just for you, for all of those that would open the door. And out of that came connection, communion, conversion. Embrace that invitation from him today. What would it look like for some of you? You can stand with me, will you? Sing a song. We'll open the floodgate. You can eat. What would it look like for you to spend time with Jesus? I really think it comes from that. Like, I don't know if I'm a good enough dude to do the things I'm talking about apart from Jesus. Apart from him, I'm judgmental, sinful. I mean, I'm that too, anyways, but with him, then I'm able to extend that invitation to others. So really it starts there. Eat a meal with Jesus. For some of you that don't know him, maybe that means just surrender your life to him. All of it. Enlarge my heart, Lord. I want my whole heart to be surrendered to you because I want to follow you. It starts right there. Then I start learning and practicing how to see and serve others as Jesus did. Then I start opening up. Hey, you want to sit with me? Have a cup of coffee with me? Tell me what's going on. I'm sorry. Suddenly there's a place of grace. A heart is exposed. Hope is expressed and lived out. And love and transformation happen. You have an opportunity today to do that at a barbecue, even that. Invite somebody to sit with you. Scary. So worth it. And it's free. You don't have to buy. No pressure. Father, thank you for today. Man, I love you. I love these folks. It's a lot of heavy things that we're experiencing. There's some people here that it's not because you said, it's just because we know that it's true. There's some people here that feel alone, like nobody cares. They feel like nobody sees them. May they feel and know that you see them. You see them. You see them. We do as well. We're imperfect humans. It's not an excuse. It's just the truth. We need you to be able to show that grace to others. Help us practice that, whether it's at a table today with a burger, a cup of coffee later on in the week, an invitation to eat lunch in the break room, or just some other creative way with a neighbor over something, on the street. Whatever it is, Lord, open up our hearts. And then as certain things rise up, may we refocus on you and not have judgment, but compassion, grace over shame, love. Man, may it just rise up and flood out into their lives. And so thank you. And we need that for our world today. In Jesus' name, amen.